I'd like to call this regular council meeting of March 22nd to order. And need a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor Dixon, Councillor English, all in favor. Motion is carried. And I need a motion to adopt the minutes of the special council meeting of February 23rd. Councillor Souls, Councillor Duke, all those in favor. Motion is carried. And I need a motion to adopt the special council minutes of March the 8th. Councillor Nixon and Councillor English, all those in favor. Motion is carried. I'll get you in on one of these, Aaron, as soon as you're ready. I need a motion to adopt the regular council minutes of March the 8th. Councillor Orlando, Councillor Brothers, all in favor. Motion is carried. And the last one is need a motion to adopt the special council minutes of the public hearing of March the 8th. Councillor Nixon, Councillor English. All those in favor. Motion is carried. Is there any business arising from the minutes of the special council meeting of February 23rd? Special council minutes of March the 8th.
Yes, Your Worship, just in the special council minutes from March the 8th, on page 2 of 3, Mountain View School, just would like to ask staff to follow up with the school board to have a meeting and look at a public information session on that piece of land.
Is that just information or direction, or do we need a motion for that?
If council wanted us to do a formal public information meeting, but if you wanted a staff-to-staff meeting, I think that would follow from council's release of the in-camera resolution on the matter. It just depends what you have in mind.
So I guess the question, Mr. Strachan, is that as this process starts unfolding, do you envision that there's going to be another public information session on this site or sites?
It would be up to the school district as they develop their application. There certainly would be a public process as part of the actual formal application once it's received. Certainly, council could direct staff to engage with school district staff, as the CEO mentioned, to assist with their process as they develop their application.
Okay, I just think that staff to staff is a matter of course. I'm just the question from Councillor Nixon is about asking about a public information session. Mr. Chabot.
Your Worship, I think we should follow up to request a formal response to council's resolution and see where that might lead us before we plan anything else.
So let's.
I'll make a formal resolution now to have staff follow up with the school board staff, and then, if needed, to have City Council meet with the school board and look at this piece of property with the community in mind and what would be the best process to move it forward.
How's that for you? I need a seconder for that motion first. You're seconding it? Okay. Is there discussion on this motion?
I just want to make sure that Community Connections, as one of the partners that's interested in this piece of land, gets included in the discussions moving forward.
Any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Is there any other business arising out of that special council minutes of March the 8th? Of the regular council minutes of March the 8th? Or the special council minutes, the public hearing on March the 8th?
Your Worship, I don't want to open up discussion and get us into trouble, but can we ask staff for a timeline on the section
Covenant 219?
Covenant 219, thank you.
Mr. Strachan, is there any timeline on when that would be coming forward?
We're hoping to bring it forward to the next council meeting. We're meeting again, we met with the developer last week, and we're meeting again this week, this coming week,
okay.
To hammer out some of the details of that component, as well as beginning to look at the master development agreement and how that would work. So we're just trying to locate where these things are best to be situated.
That answers your question?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship.
Any other business arising from the special council minutes of the public hearing on March the 8th? We have one delegation today. We have Melissa Hemphill from Food Security. Melissa, if you wouldn't mind.
Hi. Council for allowing me to present my program to you today. My name is Melissa Hemphill and I'm the Food Security Coordinator with Community Connections. I'm here to talk to you about food security in Revelstoke, a growing trend. So there's lots of different ways to define what food security is, but I think the the UN's World Food Summit came up with a good definition that food security exists when all people at all times have access to sufficient, safe, nutritious food to maintain a healthy and active life. So today we're going to look at the history, the people, and the plan. Cut off there. So the history of food security in Revelstoke, I think, started off in 2009 with the North Columbia Environmental Society forming the Local Food Initiative Subcommittee. Their aim was to create a community garden at the Revelstoke United Church, and they did so, of course. And a lot more food-related programming has been developed and delivered to the community ever since. One of the projects that they undertook was the development of the Revelstoke Food Charter, and that was ratified by the city, by the school district, Community Connections, and over 50 community members. Since then, the Local Food Initiative has broken out from the North Columbia Environmental Society and formed its own society this past June because they're so full of programming and opportunities that they need to be their own entity. And then in 2014, the city commissioned a food security strategy, and that has been my guiding document. So the Revelstoke Food Security Strategy was created by Fraser Blythe of Selkirk Planning and Design and Haley Ross. So they looked at what the goals are in our community for food security. They evaluated the current level of food self-sufficiency, and they mapped parcels of land that are suitable for land production in our area. They looked at the current programs, organizations, and policies in our community that are working towards food security initiatives, and then they identified the gaps in those programs, organizations, and policies. And then what you can't see at the bottom, unfortunately it's cut off, are the recommendations that they came up with. And so those recommendations are what guide my work. And of course you've all read every single word of this document, I'm sure, right? So the 5 security goals that they came up with in developing this strategy was access to food, that everyone can get the food that they need as a basic human right. That food is environmentally sustainably produced in our area. That we have a strong food culture that helps to define us. And that we look at economic sustainability through food production and sales. And education, so that everybody in Revelstoke knows what food security is and knows their right to it. When they looked at the current level of food security in our area, they looked at 4 different areas of that. So uber local, what you could get while riding around your bike. So within 16 kilometers, only 1.6% of our food comes from that area. And then going a little bit bigger, Shelter Bay to Mica Dam brought in another 1.8% of our food. And then taking a big lens, looking regionally within 250 kilometers, we capture another 5.4% of our food. So that shows us that over 90% of the food that our community is eating is being imported. What they also identified was that 153 hectares of land within our community has been identified as having varying potential as food production space. So there's lots of potential. When they looked at those gaps in what's going on in our community and came up with recommendations, they rated those recommendations as to the effectiveness of them and the feasibility. And so we first looked at the very high recommendations. So first thing on the list was to form a food security advisory committee, so stakeholders from around the community that were in place to oversee the strategy development in the first place. So we kept together as a unit, and we hired a food security coordinator, which was me. I requested to be a community liaison with our local farmers market board. Unfortunately, they turned me down. And so we'll continue to try to work with them and pursue that. We're working on getting some online food security information going on. So on the Revelstoke Local Food Initiative's website, revelstokelocalfood.com. And what's cut off on the bottom there is the Community Connections website. So 2 places where we're directing some information. And still in progress is we're working on getting food security language into the OCP and zoning bylaw. We've got a backyard chicken bylaw, but we don't have bylaws for any other livestock for food. and the CSRD is working on the community compost system. So all of those very high recommendations are either complete or in progress, which is great. So the first piece of funding that we got was from CBT, Community Initiatives Program, and that was to establish the Food Security Coordinator position. With that position, I've been doing a lot of research about what other communities are doing, what sort of programs we can get into place, looking through that strategy document really carefully. I've pursued some funding, and we'll get to that in a minute. And I think one of the biggest pieces that I've been doing is building the relationships around food security in our community. So looking at the local programs and agencies that work with food, meeting with our MLA, connecting with Interior Health. I've gone down to Caslow and Golden to check out what they're doing, and I've liaised with people in Winlaw and Shuswap that are involved with food security. And again, what's cut off on the bottom there, I'm not too sure what's going on, is that I sit on the City Healthcare Advisory Committee. I sit on the Local Food Initiative, and I also sit on the Columbia Basin Rural Development Institute's Food System Advisory Committee. So we're looking at a regional scope of food security and what we can do to improve it. I've been able to go to the BC Association of Farmers Market conference in Kelowna. I was the only person from Revelstoke there. And I was also able to go to the Farm Food Fork conference in Caslow, which was more geared towards farmers and producers, but allowed me to connect with some great people in the food security world. And in a couple of weeks, I will go to Invermere to the Slow Food Canada National Summit. And again, some really great workshops happening there, as well as great connections, so really looking forward to that. So, as I said, part of what I've been working on is pursuing some funding. So our funding success to date. I received a grant from CBT under their social grant arm, and that was for a food recovery feasibility study. So this is what you've been hearing about in the news, if you've heard it. And so what we're working on doing is developing a program where we can collect surplus food from businesses, whether that's grocery stores, backcountry lodges, corner stores, banquets, all kinds of places, and get that redirected to vulnerable families and seniors. And so this has two aims. One is to decrease food waste. So there's approximately 36% of our landfill is organic waste. And that has huge environmental implications, as well as social implications, that we have a lot of hungry people in our community. So trying to piece these things together. So it's a big puzzle to figure out how we're going to get this program in place. So we're connecting with businesses, we've got to figure out the pickup, the tracking, the storage, the distribution, and then of course the long-term funding to keep it going. So we're a few months into about a 6-month project with that. So far it's quite successful. We're currently working with one food outlet and we're recovering approximately 500 pounds of food a week. So it gives you an idea of how much food is going to waste in our community and how wasteful that is, and a huge waste of resources. So we're really excited about how that's going and look forward to more development. The other piece I've been able to put in place is a partnership with the Employment Program of BC with their Job Creation Program. So we've established a 6-month project where we have 2 full-time employees and they're working on 5 different projects. They're looking to write some newspaper articles, media output. They currently, right now, are just working on tying up a food co-op feasibility study, which was a recommendation from the food security strategy. They're going to be looking into a food tourism study. What can we do to promote our area in terms of food? They're looking at a mentorship program development, getting more people learning about growing food. And the final one that's cut off there is the land to garden program development, so turning more land into productive space. We've also applied to the CBT Community Initiatives Program for 2016, and we'll hear back from that in a few weeks. So of course, I'm not the only one in the community who's working on food security and getting food into hungry bellies. Food's everyone's concern. So the school district has a lot of programming in their schools around nutrition and health and getting good food into their students. And they're also looking at their breakfast programs and developing those. Interior Health has a good, strong food security agenda, and they're providing funding to communities for those types of programs. Of course, the Revelstoke Local Food Initiative is continuing with their community gardens, gardening workshops, school programs, and community events. The CSRD, as I mentioned, is looking at diverting organic waste. The Aboriginal Friendship Society is closely tied with food and always has that on their minds in their programming, but they're just getting going. And of course, individuals and businesses are working on food. So there's a fair bit of food work going on in our community that I hope you're aware of. And so the food security coordinator position it hasn't even been a year that I've been doing the work, but I feel that we've gotten a lot of work done already and some good funding programs going on. And the list of opportunities is huge for what we can do. And so it's really exciting to be on the cusp of making some good social change. Are there any questions?
Councillor Nixon and then Councillor Brothers.
Just comments. It was a good presentation, upbeat, 2 to 10 minutes there. Great. And I really support the work that you're doing in the community and how much work you've been able to accomplish with a very, very small budget. I know how small the budget is. And I really offer out kudos to Community Connections for taking the lead here. I remember it was Councillor Johnson and Mr. Rooney and myself that sat at the first meetings where we came up with the charter, for the food charter. And there's a lot of work that's come out of there. So good on you. Thank you.
Councillor Brothers.
Just a question about the liaison with the market. What's the objective of having a liaison with the local market, and what's the difficulty with the success?
The objective is to represent the community. Currently on their board is just vendors. And under the BC Association of Farmers Market, the goal of farmers markets is to exist for the vendors and the community. So trying to bring that community piece into it. To let the farmers market know about other things that are going on in the community that could affect what they're doing, and also to be a bit of a liaison to help people get into the farmers market, to become vendors, what's involved, who do they connect with. So trying to encourage people to grow and produce food, and then so being that liaison to connect them to the selling piece. And the reason that they cited for not taking on that representative position was that they cited that they have to follow the Society Act, and so they're unable to allow the position. So it wasn't really clarified. My understanding is that each farmer's market has their own bylaw, or set of bylaws, and I believe, I haven't been able to access them, but I believe that this market's bylaws say that only vendors can be board members. So it's a real limiting factor. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions, Melissa. You had mentioned about bylaws for livestock for food.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've gone through the whole chicken thing.
Yep.
And I guess our application forms must be a little tough for those chickens to fill out because we haven't had a lot of chickens filling them out.
Mm-hmm.
So what other livestock are you envisioning, and where, like, this is the first I've heard of other livestock for food, where is that part, where is that in the process?
Right, so it's just a kind of vague recommendation in the strategy to have these bylaws. So I haven't done a whole bunch of work yet, but the first place that I've been starting to research is with beekeeping and seeing what other communities have in terms of bylaws for beekeeping. Okay. And to speak to your comment that not many permits have been taken out, I know that the Local Food Initiative has been urging people to, and that in the next month, I think it's sometime in April, they'll be hosting a chicken keeping workshop to help people learn the proper ways of keeping it, and we'll have all that permit information there. So hopefully through that we can encourage a few more folks.
I noticed watching the news the other night that there's a trend coming or starting that grocery stores are carrying imperfect in seconds and things like that, and I think that that's really a great idea. Do you know if there's any talk of that happening here?
Not that I know of. I haven't asked the question yet to our local grocers. I've been focused on the food recovery at this point. I don't know what their purchasing processes are of how they select what they're getting, so I can't really
when I see the comment on the news saying that people can be reducing their fruits and vegetable bill by 30% by going to imperfects, I think that would be a real asset for a lot of people in this community.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially if you're just taking vegetables, chopping them all up or mashing them and cooking them, it doesn't.
Exactly, yeah. And a huge piece to food waste in general, because I think the number is around 20% of food waste is generated on the farm. So that's a significant piece that we can reduce by finding a purchasing place for those imperfect.
Any other questions, Councillor Orlando?
Your Worship, thank you. You mentioned that 36% of food winds up as food waste. Is that like the percentage of bio waste? Is that the banana or the banana peel in the trash? And I guess the second part of the question, more to the point, is with your food recovery feasibility study, if this were to get up and running, what would the program, what do you think it would look like once it was, funded and completed, and who's operating and all that kind of stuff?
Right. So the first part, so of all of our garbage in the landfill, 36% is organic food waste. How much of that is edible? I don't know. Yeah. But globally, a third of the food that we produce is going in the garbage. So we don't have an exact stat for this area on that. But the grand vision for this program is that it would run in conjunction with the food bank, and with the majority of the food going to the food bank clients. But I'm also building a list of other agencies that deliver or present food options to their clients, which are vulnerable citizens of some sort. So whether this is going to school breakfast programs, it's going to other programming within Community Connections, the women's shelter, they took a bunch of cakes today. So trying to get it out to people through different means. So the program in other places looks like a delivery truck driving around town, picking up at various locations. Some locations will be daily, some will be on call, everything in between. Taking it to one place to collect it and sort it out, store it properly. Hopefully there can be a kitchen there where you can turn it into soups and preservable things to give the food more life, and then distribute it to those vulnerable citizens. That's the overall plan.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments from council? Thanks very much for your presentation. Very well done. Looking forward to seeing more things. Moving to old business, item 8A is the financial plan bylaw.
Yes, Your Worship, I'll bring forward that the 2016-2020 5-year financial plan bylaw 2104 be adopted.
Motion by Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor English. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion is carried. Moving into new business, first item is administration.
Your Worship, I'll bring this forward. Item 9A, I move that the protection of personal information collected from ICDC policy A1 be approved.
Motion by Councillor Orlando, seconded by Councillor Sauls. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Orlando.
Your Worship, this is a housekeeping item in order to deal with things like abandoned cars. The municipality needs to know who owns the car, so they need to get that information from ICDC. ICDC has implemented a new policy whereby we need to have a policy where we're protecting the personal information while we collect that information. Just real simple housekeeping stuff. We've done it before. It's just a new policy we need to adopt.
And it's a way we can collect fines from people. Questions from council? Councillor Nixon.
Just, Your Worship, is this something that the regional districts had in place for a while with their dumps for collecting people that are not paying?
I'm thinking yes.
I think so, yeah. So it's a good start.
Any other comments or questions? Motion's on the floor. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Item B.
Your Worship, item 9B, I move that the bylaw enforcement and response to citizen complaints policy B2 be approved.
Moved by Councillor Orlando, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion.
Your Worship, we discussed this at our most recent administration meeting. This is a new policy that, like it says, outlines how city staff, such as bylaw enforcement staff, deal with complaints. It gives a bit more of a formal process at the committee level, we discussed basically what's going on and how it works now, and some of the difficulties that bylaw and enforcement officers face with various issues. Sometimes there's excessive complaints, or maybe the complaints are more of an interpersonal thing that the city doesn't want to be involved in lots of different circumstances, and that's the nuts and bolts of what's going on there.
I think that some of these complaints are not the bailiwick of bylaw enforcement, and we have to define what our jurisdiction is. Councillor Nixon.
Yeah, I think you raise a really good point, Your Worship. I think this is good to have in place because the biggest thing we need our commissioners to know is boundaries, so that they don't get into trouble where it's something that actually belongs with the RCMP.
Exactly. Comments or questions from council? All those in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you.
Your Worship, item 9C, I move that the following policies be rescinded: policy FR3, employee fire department, and policy PRC-4, rental of city facilities at arena and community center.
Motion by Councillor Londo, seconded by Councillor English. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Londo.
Your Worship, as council is aware, we're undergoing a policy review. The end goal is to freshen everything up, identify policy gaps, and this is just a simple case of two old policies. You can see if when you guys looked into the item itself, they're on courier font from way back in the day. They have been made superfluous because of new policies that have taken out, so just trimming them out.
Maybe we should just have a motion that anything that's in courier font, we should just get rid of. That would be easier. We have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on the motion? I don't have anything against courier font. I want everybody to know it's nothing personal. All those in favor? Motion's carried.
And Your Worship, I'll move item 9D, that the amended employee health and wellness policy P11 be approved.
Motion by Councillor Londo, seconded by Councillor English. Discussion. Councillor Londo.
Yeah, Your Worship, I really think that this policy is something that should be opened up for council discussion right now. There's a bunch of different variables and alternative options outlined in the report. Basically, probably a couple years ago, I actually can't remember the date, there was a discount extended to city staff for specific long-term passes, like year-long passes to the pool. It was a successful program in that, if I recall, when the report was done on how it was turning out, the city actually collected more revenue than they had been from that cohort by making it less expensive. So more people were being involved. This recommendation from staff outlines extending that to potentially volunteer firefighters. There's also City Council, as well as there's another, in the options discussion, there's a possibility of extending it to the RCMP. So, and this also includes family members of them. So at this point, I would really like to hear council, and that was the discussion we had at the administration meetings. It might be something to put on the table for everyone to see what they think.
Councillor Nixon and Councillor English.
Your Worship, I just encourage council to open it up to the council, to the volunteer firefighters, and to the RCMP, and just encourage people to get out and have a healthy outlet and increase those numbers at the facilities.
I would then suggest, Councillor Nixon, that you make that an amendment to the motion.
That's an amendment to the motion.
And seconded by Councillor English. So the discussion now is on the amended part of the motion, which is the addition of RCMP and volunteer fire department.
And council.
Wasn't council already in the...
Already was.
That's right.
Okay.
So is the firefighters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so the amendment is that members of the task.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, I guess I missed that. So it's adding, the amended part is adding RCMP. Discussion on the amendment only.
I'm happy to support the amendment, just supporting the amendment, extending a higher quality of life to the people that are serving the citizens in the city in the capacity that the RCMP do, I think is very important to support. And I think we should open this policy up for them as well.
Councilor Brothers.
I understand that, if we're going to open it up, we should open it up to all employees of the city, but here's the concern that I have. And wellness and health is important for all community members. It's not only important for the employees of the city, but also everybody else. And I raise it as a question mark. I mean, is it appropriate for us to single out the city employees and say, well, it's important for them to have this special consideration, but we don't do it for the rest of the community? So I just open it up for discussion. It's something that stuck in my me.
Well, I guess what I look at is that the employees and the volunteers that the city has, just like a lot of other businesses, there are perks to working in different businesses. You want to jump in here and say something? Mr. Donato,
Your Worship, just to bring...
The only person in the room that's allowed to interrupt me is you.
I was just trying to get your attention. You can, turn it on. Your Worship, I'd just like to bring forward that there are programs for other members of the community as well for discounted pool passes. So basically any business that has an employee health and wellness program, we do offer discounted passes to. That's in the fees and charges bylaw. So we do have a few companies that have taken that opportunity and registered their employees for fitness passes at the rec center. And we also have the core pool pass program, in which that's a partnership with Community Connections. So they administer the program. So that means they screen all the applicants that make application to that program, and it's based on an income level. So anyone under a certain income level that is a resident of the community can apply for a free pool pass through that program. And the city sponsors that program by offering the pool pass. And I think we've been doing that since 2009. So there are other opportunities for members of the community to receive discounted pool passes as well.
Any more comments or questions from council? This is on the amendment part of the motion.
Your Worship, I just agree with going forward with the amended part of the motion. I really believe that from the corporation's perspective, making sure that our members and those who are serving the community are taken care of from a wellness perspective, and that would be a prudent thing to do, because in the long run, if everyone is healthy and able to work, it's going to save the corporation
And we'll work them harder. Councilor Lando.
Your Worship, I have a question of staff. Ms. Donato, when she mentioned that there are some companies that are taking advantage of this policy if they implement a health and wellness, employee health and wellness policy in their company, is that still open for other companies to come forward?
Yes.
Okay.
Question is on the amendment adding the RCMP to this program. Any more comments? All those in favor? The amended part of the motion is carried. Now we have the amended motion on the floor, which is the health and wellness program with the addition of volunteer firemen, council, RCMP. Is there any comments or questions on the amended motion? Councilor English.
Just that I'm very happy to see this come forward, and I will support the motion.
I thought you were going to say you were going to support the program.
I probably will do that too.
Any comments or questions on the motion? Councilor Lando.
Your Worship, the one thing that really trips me up is I don't like to see a system in place whereby council votes for things that benefit themselves directly. However, weighing it all out, I will support this because I believe that one of the things that we need to do as a council is encourage a demographic at the council table whereby we have mention that oftentimes for younger, especially for younger council members, or people busy with the burden of taking care of kids and paying the bills, I think it might be a benefit to them and their families and to diversity in council, so I will support it.
Did you just call me old? Amended motions on the floor for the Health and Wellness Program with the addition of Council RC. I can't help it. And Volunteer Fire Department. Is there any more comments or questions from council? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Next item is Highway Use Agreement, and as this is one of my buildings, I'm going to declare a conflict and hand over the chair to Councillor Nixon.
Okay, item E. Who wants to move that?
Oh, I guess, sorry, administration.
Councillor Lund.
Item 9E, I move that the highway use license for 120 Connaught Avenue for the purpose of installing an underawning sign be approved.
Seconder on that motion, Councillor English. Any discussion?
I will admit that I have read this report. I'm not prepared to speak to it very much because it wasn't something that came through the administration committee. But as you can see, it's for a sign at a bike shop. That has a long report attached to it of our own details.
I do have to mention that Ms. Floyd educated the mayor and I as to what the name means. It's from a bike run up on Mount McPherson. The name kind of struck me as different. Any more discussion on the motion? All in favor? Carries. You call the mayor back in.
Move forward 9F. That development variance permit application number DBP 2016-03 be approved.
Motion by Councillor Duke, seconded by Councillor Nixon. And Mr. Strack, you have a presentation for us.
Very briefly, Your Worship. The development variance permit is for an accessory building. Council had previously approved the DVP for this accessory building. However, the construction didn't proceed as scheduled and the permit expired. So this is a new permit to essentially renew the variance. We received no input from the letters that were sent to the neighbors. Thank you, Your Worship.
Comments or questions from council? Councillor Nixon.
Just a question for staff, Your Worship. This building owner knows that this permit is good for 2016 and is not extended into next year?
Your Worship, I believe they have a little longer than that to complete their construction. I believe it's 2 years.
So it won't come back again then?
No, unless they don't proceed within the next 2 years.
Okay, just want to clarify.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Motion's carried.
Continue on to move forward 9G. That the application fee of $600 for development variance permit application number DBP 2016-05 be paid from the council contingency fund.
All these separately?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion's carried.
I'll move that council approve development variance permit application number DBP 2016-05 and give notice of their intention to consider the issuance of development variance permit DBP 2016-05 for Lot 2, Plan NEP 88672, 315 First Street West, to vary the following sections of sign bylaw number 2054. Section 6.7 is varied to allow for the freestanding sign to be located at 0 meter setback from the property line, and is varied to allow for 3 freestanding signs on the lot.
Seconded by Councillor English. And Mr. Striker, do you have a presentation?
Very briefly, Your Worship, the variance is for a sign at the museum. They're proposing to install a kiosk that would have stored out at operations at this time. It's in need of refurbishment, and they've got some volunteers who are going to refurbish the kiosk, and they intend to use it to advertise events and other things going on in the museum. The museum has several signs out front already, including this tall pedestal sign, which is classed as a freestanding sign, as well as they have another sign on the far side of the staircase. So this would be the third sign. It would be located where there's a pile of snow at this photo. Nice green grass now. They'd be removing that and putting a concrete pad, and then installing the kiosk onto that concrete pad once it's been refurbished. Thank you.
Questions, Councillor Nixon?
Your worship, I understand what the museum's trying to do here, like to have something where they can go out and change what their monthly display is about. But if this was a business coming to council to ask to put signs out on the corner, we might not approve it. I just think the building's really getting overly decorated. I'm going to support this. I just think, you know, as the Heritage Commission, that's a heritage building, and there's a lot draped on that building already. Just a comment.
Councillor Brothers?
Will the city have any input on the coloring and what it looks like? So that, I mean, I see that it's royal blue and green right now, and I hear what Councillor Nixon is saying. I think it's really important that we allow the museum to display or encourage as many people as possible to come in, but I hear what Councillor Nixon is saying, and I'm just wondering whether or not we have any further say in the whole process.
Mr. Stratton?
Your worship, we certainly could ask for our color palette. This is introducing the application to council. This is not a resolution to make a decision on at this point. So there could be an opportunity to bring back with the second report, which runs on DEP's, more information about color palette.
Well, I can see the point that Councillor Nixon has brought up, and we should be treating our own entities the same as we would be treating a business. And having gone through the sign process myself quite a few times, it's a lot more onerous than what we've had today. I sure would support something coming back or something going to staff that would be similar to the same approval process that a business would go through. Even having the enhancement committee looking at what the proposal is, seeing how it's a heritage building with actually one of the revitalization kiosks that we had years ago. So I'm not sure, Mr. Stratton.
Your worship, the council has the ability to refer the application to the committees, with the Heritage Advisory Committee or the Enhancement Committee, or both. Could review this, and we would come back to council with input that we received from the community through the 100-meter letters that are sent out, as well as the resolutions from those committees.
What would a regular business be doing to go through the approval process?
Same process, your worship. They would have to apply for development variance permit. It's the sign bylaw that they're asking to vary. So it'd be quite a similar process. If it was a business that was advertising their business, likely would be a limited staff support for this many freestanding signs on a location for a business operation.
But it wouldn't be heritage advisory, community enhancement. It wouldn't be, a business wouldn't have to be, it would just go to staff, and staff would make a recommendation.
That's correct, George.
And I think I don't think that we need to be more onerous. I just don't want to be less onerous. So I think the same process that a business would be going through is what I would expect. Mr. Stratton.
Your worship, I agree with Councillor Brothers about the colors, and we'll get a palette to bring back to council.
Okay. Make sure that it's palatable.
Very well.
Questions or comments? Motion's on the floor. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you.
I'll do H. Motion that the Community Economic Development Work Plan for 2016 be approved.
Motion by Councillor Brothers, seconded by Councillor Sells. Councillor Nixon.
Can we table this work plan until Mr. Mason is present? I have a few questions on it, and I wasn't at the Development Commission where it was presented with the summary from 2015. I haven't seen that summary. It would be nice to have him present for discussion on it.
If the mover and second are okay with that, and is that the easiest way to do it? Just
Sure, if that's fine with council.
Seconder?
Yes.
Yes, Scott.
Just another comment, I agree with tabling it only because if it's a 2016 work plan, there might be some more input that comes out of the visioning session. I feel like there probably will be actually.
Okay, so tabled is, well, it's actually just withdrawn, so there's no action, it'll just come back to whenever it's ready. Okay, next. Grizzly Plaza washrooms, Councillor Brothers.
That the Grizzly Plaza washroom upgrades report written by the Director of Community Economic Development dated March 1, 2016 be received as information.
Motion by Councillor Brothers, seconded by Councillor Sells. Discussion on the motion. Just nice to see, I know that the Chamber was making comments about not having enough facilities, and this isn't exactly what they want, but it does increase the capacity. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Item J.
And I'll do it, would you like me to do it one at a time?
Well, you're just going to do a three.
Oh,
right?
three, sorry. Motion that council directs staff to prepare a report indicating the capital and operational costs of installing decorative lighting at the western entrance to the city at the junction of Victoria Road and the Trans-Canada Highway and on the bridge across the Columbia River on the Trans-Canada Highway.
Motion by Councillor Brothers, seconded by Councillor Sells. Discussion. Councillor Nixon.
Your Worship, I'm gonna vote in favor of this, but I really think what we're gonna see is a big surprise come back for capital costs and operating costs, and really, when we talk about dark skies, this really doesn't fit in with dark skies. But it doesn't hurt to have staff bring the information back.
We want to be a welcoming beacon in the night, is what we would like to be.
It sounds like we want to be doing that.
I think anything that we can do to pull more tourists off the highway, the better we are. Councillor Randall.
Yeah, Your Worship, I understand that we're discussing the first of three motions. For me, though, the real what's going to help me make a decision is the results of part three, which is when the costs come back. It's hard for me to say I like it or I don't like it before I see the bill. So.
Which was the only motion that was on the floor, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Questions, comments on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. We have nothing in correspondence, and under communications, does anybody have anything they'd like to bring out of the Economic Development Commission minutes of January the 6th? Councillor Brothers.
I'll just give a little bit more information about that. There was some discussion at the Commission about what should be referred to the Commission, in other words, projects and that type of thing, and whether they should weigh in and have a say on it. I think the staff is looking into and giving some kind of a report as to what they think should be referred and to whom or to which commission. So I think that's moving forward as far as I understand. The other thing that was of interest is there's an updating, discussion regarding the updating the retail strategy study. And Mr. Mason will ask the retail committee to have the study complete by October and November 2016. So we're moving forward on that.
Anybody have any comments on the finance minutes of January 12th? The Social Development Committee minutes of January 27th. Councillor Sells.
Your Worship, just one thing I'll bring out of those minutes is the Social Development Committee was interested in having some of their input on major developments in the community, and that was discussed at length We understand there's currently no formal process in place, and so they may want to discuss with council at another date regarding that input.
Councillor Lando.
Your Worship, I had my hand up on the same item. And, you know, just sort of looking back through my time observing councillor being in this room, I think that one of the options we always have with issues, and we've talked about it a couple times today, is the option to refer things to committees. I think generally the philosophy at this council or the de facto practice has been to try and expedite things and get it through. However, you can run into issues when you're not seeking perhaps judiciously to refer out to committees, and I think to some extent there was a feeling on that particular item that, you know, they'd like to have some say in things, or, you know, feel like they're a little bit more in the loop. So I think going forward, it's always something to consider when we're facing a question like a new kiosk at the museum today or something like that, with the Heritage Advisory Committee going to find out that.
Councillor Nixon.
I think that Development Committee is starting work on this, and I think our CAO is starting work on this with engaging the community and looking for formalized processes to keep everybody in the loop, and really that's what it's all about.
Councillor Brothers.
Yeah, and I just reiterate, that's essentially the same comment that came out of the Economic Development Commission, is that sometimes there are projects they would like to weigh in on, and we need to have some formal process of what goes to them and what doesn't go to them, so that can happen.
Councillor Duke.
Thanks. Yeah, so this has been an issue that's kind of been bumbling around with a lot of the committees, and we can refer stuff to them, and then also the staff is addressing it, because at the Environmental Committee meeting, we did see a lot of things get referred to the committee that were in context. The question is, or the concern is, that sometimes the groups are asking for things that aren't necessarily pertaining to what their group is designed for. So the staff is working on that, and they're being careful about putting things in the right direction. And like I said, we can always refer stuff.
Anything else on the Social Development Committee minutes? Community Housing Society minutes. Just let everybody know that the project is finished. We had a little mini tour the other day. I think we're sitting with 8 units that are rented out. Probably 2 more to be rented out shortly. But I think it'd be prudent to let the community know, in case they're not well aware. 2 of the units are accessible units, and I believe that 1 or both of those accessible units are still available, and it's a great facility, and getting some very good comments from people that are living there, as well as the people that have toured through. Councillor Duke.
Oh, no, I was just saying that it is confirming that it is 1 of the accessible units.
Oh, that wasn't your hand, that was,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
You said like 2 or 1.
They actually look very similar.
Sorry, that is my fault.
Anything else on community housing? Parks, Rec and Culture minutes of February 10th. Councilor Lando?
Your Worship, just to summarize a few items on there, the staff is updating the joint use agreement with School District 19, so that's sharing all facilities. One of the things that has been identified as needed to be included in this existing document that we're updating is the Performing Arts Center, so that's ongoing. We also looked at maybe changing up or displaying art projects at the community center. I discovered that we have a very extensive public art policy. It's like 10 pages long. It's very detailed. Anyways, we're looking at options there, and we're going to be vetting future options through the Public Art Committee, which also exists and meets. Yeah, and the Culinary Arts Program is going great. If you guys now that you've seen all the chefs dressed up, it's a real success story. And the program has contributed to like major upgrades in the kitchen down there. So new ovens, new stoves. It's really great.
Oh, nice. Councilor Brothers.
Can I just add one thing about the trails update, is that we are working on, staff advised that there's $25,000 that's been allocated in the budget for 2016 for a trails plan, and we are moving forward to see what we do with making trails in the city of Revelstoke.
Committee to approve public events. That's a good news story, isn't it? Just kidding. Administration, industry partnership, communication minutes of March 15th. Anything over there? Ministry of Jobs, Tourism, Skills Training, and Ministry responsible for labor, Syrian refugees update letter. Questions from media?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have 3 for you today.
Beautiful.
The first one is with regards to signage at the museum. How many signs are buildings allowed to have?
Mr. Strike, is it? He says 1.
And this one, and the museum has.
I guess one of the questions that you know, and I was going to bring it up earlier, is that is it a sign or is it an interpretive kiosk that depicting the heritage of the community? So you know, it's you know, they're not really selling anything other than we're promoting the history and heritage of the community.
Well, at some point, it's going to look pretty tacky.
Well,
I guess that'll be an argument for another day.
yeah, one person's tacky is another person's signage. What? What's number 2, David?
Number 2 is with regards to lighting. That proposed lighting of the trees and the Columbia River Bridge. Will there be any kind of environmental study that will look at light pollution?
I think that anything that we do as far as lighting in the city, we're going to be looking at LED lights and low voltage, and that would be a given. And but as far as an environmental study, I'm going to say I don't think so.
Okay.
Unless there's a request coming from council or from staff to that we should look into it.
Okay.
But I guess the first step is get the costing, see if there's approvals, and then look at what else would be involved with that process.
There's no concern that additional lighting at that particular area might mislead migratory fowl?
That'll be part of any concerns that come forward that are going to be part of the decision making of this table.
Okay,
So
thank you.
if that concern is brought up and council's going to have to decide.
Okay. Third question is with regards, I understand that we have a new staff member, Mr. Farooq Patel. Where does he come from and what is his actual role?
He comes from he's City of Coquitlam, and he is the new building inspector.
Okay.
Emily?
No, I think I'm fine.
Alex?
So you just mentioned the trails plan there. I feel like there has been trails plans put out in the past, so what's happening this year?
I'll defer to the chair of the committee, who knows a lot more about plans than I do.
It's funded this year, so the study is funded. That's the key thing. There's $25,000 allocated towards actually getting a plan in place, and planning, as you know, is the first step in being able to leverage further funding. There have been trails plans done in the past. I think, to the best of my knowledge, they were not completed or incomplete. I think we are updating some existing plans. Is that correct? I would defer to staff.
Your Worship, there has been trails plans done in the past. However, they have not been completed or received by council. So I think the starting point would be digging out those trail plans, which is something we're working on, and tying the trails plan in with the master transportation plan as well. So right now it's very preliminary. We're still discussing the route that we would take and trying to plan out what an RFP would look like and how much of the work we can get done with the amount of money we have budgeted. So we're still trying to work all that out.
Okay, so how comprehensive would this be? Is this kind of the plan that would link, I guess, Centennial Park to RMR, or are you looking at beyond that?
We haven't really discussed the full scope of that yet.
I think the bottom line, Alex, is that future of trails in the community are going to be more and more important, and we better start looking at these plans and start prioritizing and start working towards some kind of project, and I'm hopeful that this will be looked at positively by RMI funding, by nonprofit groups, service clubs, whoever, reporters that do a lot of mountain biking may want to chip in, like anything like that that helps get these projects become reality is going to be a benefit to the whole community. Emily, you had your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I just remembered the question. Any updates on the discussions with that owner at 906 Farrell Road about the building permit?
There's ongoing discussions all the time.
It'll come to council next time.
Sorry?
It'll come to council next time. There's something new to be...
Well, when it requires a council decision, it will be made at this table. Alex?
I noticed that in camera you'll be talking about the Auditor General's report. Have we been given a time, or have you been given a timeline of when that's actually going to come out?
No.
No. So what are you? Is this just a draft you're looking at, or what are you looking at?
That's what it is.
All right.
There's very strict rules around from the Auditor General's office that we have to follow, because they're not our rules.
Okay, and I know the initial work on this was done several years ago. Have they been back in contact with the city trying to get more updated information from you guys?
I'm getting a nod, yes. I haven't been part of all of these discussions, so this has been going on for quite a few years, and the report's finally come up.
Would Alan be able to answer that, or Don?
No.
Well, the time period they're looking at is the same, and there is just clarification. They just come back and say, can you give us this additional information relative to the period of time that we're looking at, which I think was 2010 to 2012.
But there's very strict rules on what we can talk about that's in the report is the reason why I said that. Is that
deal short of a couple months.
Yeah, okay.
Anybody else want to put their hand up? I need a motion to move in camera pursuant to section 90.1 A, G, and 90.2 E of the Charter. Councillor Nixon.